Can I get to know you, sir? You, like, can you tell me about yourself, what you do, and how you're involved in preprinting?
Okay, sure. So I am a medical doctor by training. I got involved in research via uh, behavioral neuroscience in rodents. So I did neuropharmacology and neurobiology of learning and memory using rodent models and using computational models from the late 90s when I was an undergrad until 2020 perhaps. Over the last 10 years, I've gradually shifted my focus from neuroscience, which I hardly do these days, to meta research applied to research reproducibility and to the publication system actually. So we have done research on preprints and related issues. So these days, I mostly dedicate my research to meta research, and I run a lot of large scale uh, collaborative projects trying to map out issues related to reproducibility within Brazil, especially. And I have been working with preprints around for around 10 years. I think we started out in 2016, which was kind of like a boom year for preprints in biology. That was around the time ASAP Bio actually came into existence. I was a bit of an open science advocate before that already, and I think preprinting really felt like the right thing to do at the time, and we really never stopped. I think since 2016, pretty much everything I publish has been published as a preprint first.
Also, yeah, very much. That's great to hear, sir. That's great to hear that you have actually been much involved in open science communication, and in fact, you have actually been very much active in it. Yeah, so glad to hear that, sir.
I also have done a fair share of of preprint advocacy in Brazil. I used to be an ASAP Bio ambassador before they have I mean, this was even before the current fellows program. In 2016-17, we did a few events with colleagues in Brazil trying to advocate for preprints, particularly in biology. And I have done research on preprints as well, on quality of reporting in preprints and on the content of comments in preprints.
Yes, so glad to hear that, sir. With your advocacy, so what has been the uptake so far in Brazil? What has been the uptake so far? What has been the turn up rate to the preprinting of papers in the field of biology?
So I don't know, on more slowly. Like I think preprint adoption has grown in Brazil over the last 10 years, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic in biology and health research at least. I think that follows the road. It has grown slower than I would have imagined. I thought when it started out in 2016, 17, it seemed like an easy cause. I mean, it seemed like there is no, and I still think it should be an easy cause. I mean, there's obstacle or disadvantage to preprinting, right? I mean, I think the repositories we have for health and biology are good. You do get visibility. Pretty much any journal now accepts something that has been preprinted before. So, like to me, it seemed like a win-win situation. I mean, I really see what you can lose by preprinting. And I think that has slowly spread through the community. But
Thank you so much for your perspective, and thank you so much for that. So, how often do you actually post or share your preprints?
as often as I have something to publish, I'd say what maybe like 2 or 3 a year. Like I don't know, like this year maybe one, two, three. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'm not a super frequent publisher, so I'd say 2 or 3 preprints a year might have been the average over the last few years.
Thank you so much, sir. So, with you kind of posting your preprints and also sharing your preprints via probably social media or any other platform, what are the responses you get from people? What are the comments you get in terms of sharing or posting your preprints?
Yeah, I would say that's it's a bit heterogeneous. I think some preprints get a lot of attention. Some remain unseen for a long time. I think it does depend on your effort to promote it via social media or other venues. But it does depend on the theme and the topic and the scope of the work. I think some preprints grab a lot of attention, and because I think they're work that's relevant to the community. Like I've had two or three preprints that really have garnered attention, but that's before because I think they were important. Like the Brazilian Reproducibility Initiative results were preprinted in April of this year, and I think we got featured in like a Brazilian media, but also international media in Nature News, in eLife, in a lot of in the Scientist, in a lot of important forums for general science communication, science journalism. And that was, I don't know, I think that was just a big project. People were kind of like waiting for the results. So even though it's not formally published in a journal yet, I think the results have largely gone around. We've been invited to talks in multiple venues. So when that happens, I think actually, like as far as I'm concerned, I'm super satisfied with how the work has gained visibility, even though it's not published in a journal. It also happened with our preprint on quality of reporting and preprints. That was also in the science news section. It was mentioned, I think, it was cited in The Economist. Again, even before it was published. So I think when you do have relevant work and you do have visibility in the community, like people who are, people who are influent in their fields and in social media who are like advertising it, I think preprints can largely serve the function, the visibility function that a good journal would have. But again, that does not happen every time. So like some preprints do not, for some reason they are not, maybe they don't reach a very popular topic with the community. And those fall silent. I've had preprints that like largely anybody looked cited or mentioned for a year or two until that got published. But again, I think that happens a bit to journal articles. So, but when you manage to make a preprint visible, I'm very satisfied with the visibility I get.
Yeah, that's a great to hear, sir. So, regarding you preprinting your work and share your preprints, have you kind of ever had any concern, maybe from other quarters or from anybody regarding preprinting of your work?
Not really. Not that I've never had any problems. I think most of the authors I work with are on board with the preprint, the general idea of preprints. I don't remember having an issue with somebody not wanting to post a work as a preprint. But I don't know. In 10 years, I don't think I've had a problem. I really have only seen, personally at least, I've really only seen advantages.
Okay, so have you experienced any barrier, probably from any source in preprinting your work, or probably in sharing your preprints? Any barrier that you think can actually limit preprint sharing generally?
I think the main barrier is really people. People are not used to it. People are, in biology, at least, right? In biomedical field, at least. I think a lot of people are not used to it. They're not familiar with it, and they feel that they don't feel they will be rewarded for it. So I think the main issue is people do see that people publish in journals. I think the main reason people feel like publishing in journals is so important is not as much reporting their work, but like seeing their work rewarded and thinking that this will be uh, counted in some way by funding agencies or hiring decisions or like so. Like people do see a lot of value in reward value in terms of like academic careers in journals. And I think people just don't see the preprints who add to that, and thus they will not use it because they don't feel they have a lot to gain from it. So these days, I think our main advocacy issues are not so much with like people trying to convince people to use preprints. I think most people will be at least like familiar with the idea in biology, but with funding agencies in Brazil in terms of somehow letting people know that preprints are viewed as a valid contribution. It doesn't mean they have to like they're going to be like counting it. But like Brazil has a national CV system, for example, like CNPq, which is like the biggest Brazilian public funder, has an online platform has had for like 25 years where everybody kind of like posts their online CV in a standardized format, and it's used for by anybody, everybody in the country, if you want. I mean, it's a very successful, regularly used CV platform, and there's no field for preprints there, right? I mean, you can like I can throw it in like other contributions or something, and I usually put it there in this generic format. But like, if they went so far as like putting a specific field like preprints, like cite your preprints here, doesn't even say you have to. They how do they take it into account? I think it does give the community the idea that that's valid and we think this is a scientific contribution. But they're very averse to open science within this particular agency, and it's been a very hard. I mean, we've been directly advocated for this for the past few months, and there's a lot of resistance. I think a lot of people still think that this is going to be somehow like flood the scientific record with the bad science. But that has already happened with journals, right? I mean, I don't think preprints add a lot in terms of noise because like there's a lot of very bad articles in journals already. So I don't see that as a super major problem. And again, I think actually like if it's infinitely easy to publish, I think people publish less because then counting papers stops making sense. But it's been a hard sell with agencies. It's been a hard sell with institutions. I think people are generally resistant to acknowledge preprints as a scientific contribution because they think that somehow they lose some kind of control that over quality that peer review somehow maintains. I think that's obviously a lie because I think I mean, anything gets published eventually in a journal if you try hard enough. There's predatory journals, there's paper mills. I mean, I think this control has already been lost for a long time, but I don't think people are quite willing to acknowledge this.
Yeah, thank you so much. So what do you think about preprint as kind of a means of empowering probably like early career researchers in actually building capacity and also in terms of promoting research capacity also and through collaboration? What do you think about it?
I think I think it's a great way to. I mean, again, I think preprints largely fill the role of journals these days. I mean, I think you can get very good visibility from a preprint. You can get it earlier, so I think that helps early career researchers. Uh, and to me, but really, I think to me, more than actually like getting some kind of like career gains, to me the big issue that makes me very enthusiastic about preprints is really the philosophical shift they entail. I think as an early career researcher, you get a lot of, I mean, you spend a lot of time worrying about people evaluating you and like trying to I mean, science. I remember myself as a younger fellow, and I remember like a lot of science seemed to be like trying to sneak into the system, trying to get past reviewers, and like a lot of the how you learn to do science is somehow how it's very tied to how please the reviewers and get published and not and I think that's a very bad stimulus. I mean, I think you should. I mean, I think to me preprints have been philosophically very important in terms of like I'm just trying to write the best paper I can write. Really, I mean, I'm not trying to sneak to impress anybody. I'm not trying to sneak past the reviewers. I'm not trying to hide anything because this is not gonna fit the story. I'm just like writing the paper as I think it should be written. I think like this is the paper I want to write. As a scientist, I think this is the best paper I can write. I'm not worrying about like will this get published or not. I think that's a very major issue in terms of actually this is the point, right? I mean, you want to write the best paper you can write in terms of like getting your research out in the open as transparently as possible and telling people you should not be worried about like what the reviewer thinks. I mean, I think you should be worried about like what's the best paper you can write. And I think I do get that out of preprints. I think it has fundamentally shifted the way I read my papers, and I think that's very important for people who are starting out in.
So to the last question, what would be your recommendation to authors? What would be your recommendation to researchers in terms of preprint sharing and kind of preprint publishing?
My recommendations would be that it should be, yeah, you should use it. Yeah, you should use it always. I think there's no reason not to preprint your research. I think it fills a role in terms of making it more readily available. I think that's an advantage both for science in terms of getting the results earlier, and in terms of yourself, in terms of establishing that I have done this. And I mean, a lot of people are afraid of like scooping that somebody's gone, but actually, preprint I think establishes priority over results or a claim. So I think that's good for you as well. And I think it really in days where like a lot of science is still behind paywalls, and in which the paid open science model that has been taken up by publishers has made it very expensive to publish in high visibility journals, and it has made it actually very not very accessible in terms of people from the global south to be able to participate in high impact journals, which charge many $1,000s for publication. I think preprints are the easiest and cheapest way to make all your research university accessible. I mean, if you not do not have the money, $5,000 in APCs, Journal X, don't do it. I mean, you can submit to the paid version of the journal, but or to some, but making a preprint available, it essentially makes science open, accessible, and I think that's super important. I think that has, I mean, I think open access has gained traction, but it has gained traction very slowly. And I think a lot of science is still behind paywalls. And I mean, just putting out a preprint is the easiest way, I think, to make all the results we have immediately accessible to all the community, because most of the repositories we work with are essentially free, both to publish and to read.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Also, in terms of policy, what do you think can be the policy formulated in promoting preprint, probably in universities or in other sectors?
I think the main policy issue is I think agencies and institutions should be clear and explicit that they will read your science no matter where it's published. That they will not use the journal as a proxy for quality, and I think that's a hard sell, because I think people are very much used to using the journal as a metric in terms of heuristics. That's the main recommendation behind DORA and Quora and many of these science assessment reform initiatives. And I think it's very important. And I think preprints should be explicitly uh, included in that. Like, I mean, if I'm a science funder or if I'm an institution trying to hire you, people, I mean, both funders and institutions should make a commitment that they will evaluate a scientist by his science and to actually read the papers, no matter where they're published. Like, so, I mean, if in my grant assessment, I'm asking you to send me 3 or 4 relevant papers so I can take a look at what you have been doing. Uh, Funders should be very explicit in saying that we can send. We're not going to look at the journal. I mean, this is not what we'll take into account. You can send us something that has been published anywhere, including in a preprint repository. So, and I think a lot of funders do. I mean, do explicitly mention the possibility that you can send a preprint within or cite a preprint within a grant proposal. Not all of them, but many of them worldwide, which is I think is an important step. But I think you should go an extra step to say, really, I mean, it doesn't really matter if it's in Nature or if it's in bioRxiv. We're going to read your research. I mean, we're interested in opening up the paper and seeing what it says. And I think that has to be made explicit by anybody who's asking you to send a grant or a job application. I mean, we're not merely count papers on your CV. We'll actually read the paper. So it is a few of them, right? And I think preprints are healthy in that sense, in which they, I mean, counting them makes it's a bit meaningless. I mean, people are very used to like counting how many papers you publish in Impact Factor X, because somehow it just seems to people that if you just publish something within Journal of Impact Factor X, I mean, that's automatically worthy of something. So you get some tokens or rewards for that. I think preprints are very explicit about that because they're very easy to publish. I mean, there's like hardly any merit in like putting it, anybody can post a PDF, right? So I think that devalues, I mean, publication by itself, and I think that's good. So I think like if we start building if you start building an assessment environment that takes preprints into consideration as much as it takes journal article. I think that very much removes the incentive that people have to count papers and just like use weird quantitative metrics, and that forces the people to read the papers. And I think that's actually very, very important.
Thank you so much for sharing your insight, and thank you so much for the knowledge you have actually shared. And I believe that this is one of the things that can actually help to improve address barrier to preprinting and also preprint sharing, and also we help to inform much policy in promoting preprint uptake. Thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate it. Thank you, sir.